In this video, I'm going to show you real quickly how to remove your knitted strand when you're ready to from a Knitting Nancy or knitting spool. So let's pretend I'm done now. You're going to use your loom hook and pull out the last stitch that you've worked, and you're going to pick it up with the hook and move it to the peg or the pin on the right. So you will end up with 2 stitches on one hook. And you can see that if you pull out too much yarn, it gets a little bit unruly. So there I have 2 stitches on one peg. And instead of using your working yarn to knit the next stitch, you take the bottom loop and lift it up over the top loop. Then you do the same thing again. You pick this loop up, you move it to the peg or the pin to the right, pull it tight enough so that it's a working stitch. You pick the lower loop up and pull it up over the loop you just made. And again, you do the same thing again. And this is what sometimes happens. I've got part of the first loop still here, and I need to pick that up over this stitch in order for this to come off cleanly. So let me pull this tighter. This doesn't want to go up. Oh, it's coming through the back, so I can just leave it there and pull this loop over to the next peg. Like that. So I end up with the last 2 stitches on the last peg, and I knit the last stitch, and then I pull the whole thing off by this loop. The last loop, you pull the whole thing off, and that little frayed area had become stuck, and sometimes you just have to break the yarn. And then you pull your whole strand out of the Knitting Nancy, and now you can see the size of the internal hole on a Knitting Nancy. And you can either use your loom hook or you can use your crochet hook. And what you want to do is take your crochet hook or your loom hook, put it through the last loop that you had, pull a length of the working yarn through it. You can cut it away from your ball of yarn first or break it. Get the scissors. So that you have, here's the end of my working yarn, and I'm pulling it through my last loop, and then you pull that last loop tight. And then what I do is I take a tapestry needle and I thread this tail of yarn onto the tapestry needle, and I just pull it right down through the center of the end of the strand, so that I end up with a strand that has no tail at either end. I do the same at the other end, so both ends end up with no tail. And then depending on what you're going to do with it, I would, with the projects I'm working on right now, I would start to form it into a circle and use straight pins to keep it in place until I sew the back together. But that's basically how you remove your work from a knitting spool or a Knitting Nancy.